We went back to Mavericks Cards and Hobbies in Mason, Ohio to cover the Pioneer RCQ tournament. In this event, we interviewed Patrick, a local player from Cincinnati, Ohio, piloting one of the best decks in the format, Mono Green Devotion. Let's see what Patrick has to say about this powerful deck.
Basically, it's a tournament where all the best players in the world from different countries and everything come in the same room and play the game that we all love.
I am Jace Belair.
And I am Stoneforge Mystic.
It's just a really amazing game.
That's just mind-boggling to even think about. I guess the rest is history. Troll, go ahead.
The thing I like most about Pioneer is it gives you this avenue to play cards that don't really see play in more powerful formats such as Modern. Just the amount of options you have that you could convince me were the correct choice to bring to a tournament. I think that's a good thing. So Mono Green Devotion is a deck that uses, the main card is Nykthos, Shrine to Nyx, which lets you accumulate tons of mana if you have enough Green Devotion in play. Then it uses classic mana ramp techniques from Green, like mana elves such as Elvish Mystic or Llanowar Elves. Then you also have a bunch of planeswalkers in the deck, namely Kiora, Behemoth, Beckoner, and Karn the Great Creator. Karn allowing you to have this toolbox sideboard in your deck that also lets you backdoor kind of into this combo win. And then Kiora just to untap either Nykthos or other sources of mana. You can either kill via the combo you have, or with just big creatures like Cavalier of Thorns, Old Growth Troll, or my list specifically, I have Tolsimir, Friend of Wolves in the deck as well. So the mana base is actually pretty simple. The main star of this deck is Nykthos. We have 4 copies of Nykthos. It is the whole reason this deck exists in this form is because you can just make obscene amounts of mana with Nykthos. I'm playing a white splash in this version, which it's not uncommon to see, mainly for 2 of my sideboard cards, Glass Casket and Portable Hole. Sometimes you just have like an extra mana or 2 when you play Karn and you just want to remove a problematic permanent from like an aggro deck. Aside from that, we do have some utility lands. 1 copy of Boseiju, Who Endures, as just kind of a free roll. I just cut a forest, put that in. And then we have 2 copies of Lair of the Hydra, just as kind of another threat, and also potentially a mana sink. The main creatures in this deck, we have 4 copies of Elvish Mystic, 4 copies of Llanowar Elves. My opinion, there will, as long as those cards are in Pioneer, there will always be some green deck taking advantage of the fact that us 8 1-mana accelerants. We do run 1 copy of Sylvan Caryatid because it has hexproof, and it can also just be a blocker at times. It's also another way to facilitate that white splasher we need it, or make black mana in a weird situation where we need that to combo. We also have our kind of big devotion payoffs in Old Growth Troll and Cavalier of Thorns. Those are creatures with 3 green mana symbols in their casting costs, so they add a lot of devotion to our board. The cool thing about Old Growth Troll, so when it dies, it has this ability where it enchants a land as an aura, but it's still a copy of itself. So even if they kill it, as long as they don't exile it, we still have those 3 devotion pips on the board. Cavalier of Thorns is great just because it's a big body. It also has reach. Spirits can kind of be a problematic matchup at times, so having a big 5/6 reach blocker that they can't remove can always really help in that matchup. But it also has the ability where it can put a land into play from its end of the battlefield trigger, or when they kill it, if let's say we're light on gas, it can take something from our graveyard and set it up as our draw next turn, so we always kind of have that inevitability. Finally, the 2 kind of weird ones, there's always a flex spot in Mono Green Devotion. Right now it's accompanied generally by Teferi, who slows the sunset, or Vraska, Golgari Queen, I believe is the card most people are playing. This is a list I got from a friend. He's actually playing 2 copies of Tolsimir, Friend of Wolves. The idea behind that is aggro matchups tend to be your bad matchups most of the time because they can get under you, they can make it so your blockers don't necessarily matter and they can build a big board of their own and then just like with mono white or something like that, brave the elements through your board. What Tolsimir does is he can give you a life buffer and also interact with creatures in play. And it also has a slight combo with Wolfwillow Haven because of the trigger that when a wolf enters the battlefield. So non-creature cards, that's the first one of the I just tend to go by command on cost order. The first one's Wolfwillow Haven. It's just a good way to ramp your mana. It avoids creature removal, which is sometimes that can be a big problem. If people kill all of your elves, you might want a way to ramp your mana that doesn't use that, take up a creature slot and doesn't die to any kind of creature removal. The other ones, we have Karn and Kiora, our main planeswalkers, which are really important just to accelerate our game plan. With Kiora, it also is a source of card advantage because both Cavalier and Old Growth Troll can trigger Kiora's passive ability, just draws cards. And then Karn's a big one. Our entire sideboard is devoted to Karn. I have no cards that I actively want to sideboard in any matchups. I have 15 artifacts that I can search for with Karn. So Karn kind of works as this giant toolbox engine. It has the ability to get us our combo pieces and just kill our opponents. It has the ability to get the card God-Pharaoh statue and just lock our opponent out of the game half the time. It can get removal spells and Portable Hole and Glass Casket. It can get value pieces such as Esika's Chariot. I'm even running a board wipe in there. It's with Karn Sylex. And then finally, the last non-creature spell is Storm the Festival. It's a great way to build up your board and kind of cheat on mana by putting these 3, 4, 5 drops into play for only, like, you get 2 of those for only 6 mana. And then it also is a great late game mana sink because you has flashback for 10 mana, which you can do again, and it's very trivial to create that amount of mana in this deck with Nykthos. And kind of with all Magic, you just want to see how can you use all of the mana you have this turn. So the early, like, first 2 or 3 turns, you're looking to just put mana accelerants into play, whether that be Elvish Mystic, Llanowar Elves, Wolfwillow Haven. That's another good one that you can like untap that land with Kiora. Kiora's another big part of that. Turns, that's pretty much turn 1, 2. Turn 3 is generally where you start playing some of your bigger things, like Cavalier of Thorns and Storm the Festival. Storm the Festival is a big part of the deck because it allows you to have sort of this value game plan. And the whole point of that kind of mid-turns is just building your board. That's the whole thing we're trying to do here, is build a big board so we have lots of devotion for Nykthos, and we can just create obscene amounts of mana and use either the flashback on Storm the Festival or Karn to just take advantage of that.
Make 7 mana. Minus Kiora targeting Nykthos. Use 5 of the mana. Play a Cavalier. Trigger. I'm going to stack it so this one resolves first. With all those triggers on the stack, I'm going to use my remaining 2 floating mana and make 10 mana.
The combo is in itself kind of convoluted. It focuses specifically around Karn and a artifact that you play in your sideboard called Pestilent Cauldron. Now, we really don't care about that side of the card at all until the very end. The main card that we care about is the back side of Cauldron called Restorative Burst. But most importantly, it exiles itself upon resolution, so you can get it back with Karn, because Karn just doesn't check for outside the game, it also checks for cards that are in exile. So you use untap effects, specifically Kiora, to untap your Nykthos with a large amount of devotion in play. The goal generally is somewhere around between 12 to 14. As long as you have that, you can loop your different planeswalkers. The original versions of the combo needed you to have 2 copies of Karn and 2 copies of Kiora to be able to legend rule them into the graveyard and then bring them back. Now there's different ways that you can do it, either using the Chain Veil, which allows you to activate your planeswalkers additional times, or Heart of Kiran, which also allows you to put your planeswalkers into the graveyard via Heart of Kiran's crew ability, which you can activate multiple times. The whole main point of the combo is you generate a scenario where you have a loop of casting Restorative Burst, getting things back, making mana, and then using Karn to get Restorative Burst back again, and that will let you generate infinite mana and infinite life. But it's infinite life for both players, which is very important. This is where the front side of Pestilent Cauldron comes in. You have 2 different ways to make black mana in your sideboard. You either have a Treasure Vault if you haven't played a land for turn, which you can sacrifice to make treasures, or you have a card called Reckoner Bankbuster, which, if you do it enough times, it makes a treasure token. That lets you cast the front side of Pestilent Cauldron, and you can activate its, I think its second ability, which target player mills cards equal to the number of life you've gained this turn, which is all of their cards. And then in their upkeep, in their draw step, they can't draw a card and they die. It's a little convoluted. There's a lot of different ways to get there, but that's essentially the goal of doing it every time.
Elf. Go to combat. Attack you for 4.
I just think it's the best deck in the format. I don't think it's particularly close. You just have this very good value engine throughout the deck, and if they try to interact with that, sometimes you will just start combo killing them, and that's why I'm playing it today.
That's it for this episode. We'd like to thank Patrick for giving us the time to explain how this combo deck works. He did very well and won the event, which qualified him for the Regional Championship later this year. We will have another Pioneer Deck Tech coming next week, so we hope to see you again. Thanks for watching Inside the Deck.